Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the Shoshone National Forest in Northwest Wyoming. The area consists of rocky crags composed of granite. Peaks soar to over 12,000 feet in elevation, and the pine and fir forests retreat in this alpine environment. The valleys showcase green meadows speckled with ponds and streams and lakes. Wildlife abounds, with moose, elk, and deer sampling the greenery, and wolves, bears, and cougars stalking the shadows. This place is a sportsman's paradise, but hidden dangers are aplenty on these slopes. 62-year-old Ron Leming and his 37-year-old son, Ron Jr., have spent a few weeks each of the last several years archery hunting for elk near Boulder Basin. The 15-mile pack ensures that they are nearly always alone and have the land and the animals to themselves. It is a time of bonding, shared over 3 generations, but this trip poses a threat that could bring that tradition to a tragic end. Each year they manage to camp in the same location and stay up beneath the night sky dappled with stars. Commemorating previous adventures and curiosities, the men grow their bond stronger and pursue their favorite game animal, bull elk. To hunt elk, one of the men will set up in an ambush position with his bow and arrow, while the other operates an elk call to bring in challengers to a perceived rival. The challenge of convincing one of the most wary animals in the continent to come into archery range is a pursuit that develops a bond that transcends time. Being located in such a remote area is not without its risks. The previous year, Ron ruptured a tendon in his arm while putting his saddle on his horse. This injury left his arm in severe pain and prevented him from drawing his bow, effectively ending his hunting for the year. After returning home, a surgery was successfully performed to repair the tendon, but the rehab and healing process took a very long time. By the time he was okay to resume archery practice, he had lagged in his abilities to the point where he was worried that he could even fully recover. When the season finally rolled around, he had built up just enough confidence to participate. Ron and Ronnie had 2 very different success levels in their hunting experience. Ronnie had taken several elk in prior years, while his father had a distinct history of missing shots at critical junctures. This year alone he had missed twice, and was hoping to make up for it in his next opportunity. On the morning of September 12, 2008, as the duo prepared to head up the trail to hunt, Ron said a quiet prayer for success. He was feeling like he may be too old to play a young man's game, and wondered if his best days hunting were behind him. He asked God to guide his arrow, and recognized the futility of such a selfish prayer. Given what was about to unfold, his request was timely, and answered perfectly. The 2 men made their way through the morning twilight to one of their favorite hunting spots, they referred to as the Rock. A long series of cliffs with clustered timber stands gave them both a limited escape route for the game they pursue and the opportunity to see it. In order to hunt this broken territory, where swirling winds carry your odors to nearby noses, they were wearing elk urine to disguise their scent. Their camouflage clothing helped conceal them from wary eyes while they slowly picked their way through the low sagebrush. They discussed the tactics they were planning on using at this place, and Ronnie took his position about 40 yards or so higher up on the hill than his father. He then began calling for elk. He called for about a half an hour when the men noticed that a bull had broken from cover below them and was now moving toward the ambush point near Ron. It approached to just over 80 yards, and just out of range for Ron to shoot it with his bow. It began to work over a small sapling with its antlers as a demonstration of its toughness. Ronnie continued to call and try to entice the bull closer with more challenges using his elk bugle. As he called, he heard a rustle in the bushes just behind and downwind of him. It was a smaller bull, called a raghorn. The bull smelled Ronnie's scent on the breeze and immediately bolted. The big bull was still raking his antlers on the small tree, though, so Ronnie continued trying to work him into position for his father to shoot him. The big bull slowly began to make his way closer to Ron and was only about 35 yards away. The wind was perfect and led their scent in the opposite direction from the bull. Just as Ron was getting ready to draw his bow, the bull bolted before the elder could get a shot sent. Ronnie was perplexed as to what could have sent the bull into such a panicked exit. It couldn't have smelled the men, and they didn't make any sudden movements that would give them away. It was at that moment that Ronnie stood up and turned around. Where the small bull was previously, now a large male grizzly bear emerged from the brush. The 11-year-old 500-pound bear rippled with muscle as it strode from cover and briefly sized Ronnie up. Its dark coat hid it well in the shadows and earth tones of the surrounding terrain. After only a few seconds, the bear was covering the ground between it and Ronnie with alarming speed. He could see the eyes of the beast focused on him as it pumped its claws toward the ground, reaching further each time as it picked up speed. The bear had heard the elk calls from the Lemings, as well as the other two bulls. It came in fully expecting to see one of its favorite prey animals, and those predatory instincts are very hard to extinguish. Now the Lemings had decided, when they were picking their gear up for the trip, that weight would be important. In order to cut down on their pack load, they had decided to leave some heavier and probably unnecessary items at home. 2 of these items turned out to be extremely important on this trip: bear spray and a firearm. Now facing the charging bear, Ronnie only had his bow to protect him, and considered drawing down on the bear as it approached. The bear was upon him so quickly that all he had time to do was jump out of its way. The bear streaked past Ronnie, but quickly turned to continue its pursuit. Ronnie next used a tree for brief cover as he bolted downhill and away from the bear. Yelling at the bear as he ran, it wasn't long before the bear and Ronnie were approaching Ron. Right behind Ronnie, his father could see the massive bear focused in pursuit of his son. The thought of his son being mauled flashed through his mind, as did fond memories of his son's infancy and childhood. His protective ire was roused, and he knew he had to stop this right away. Now, the struggles they'd faced the past year with his injury and missing shots at elk were nowhere near his mind. As Ronnie ran toward his father, Ron drew his bow back and pointed his arrow at the charging bear, with his feet planted firmly on the ground. From Ronnie's perspective, he could see his father as he approached him. He saw Ron draw back his bow, and even saw the arrow zip past his legs only a few feet away. He was so intent on escape, he didn't bother to turn to see if the arrow had hit its mark or skipped harmlessly across the ground. The bear caught Ronnie and pushed him to the ground. Rolling over onto his back, Ronnie punched and pushed the bear in a feeble attempt to defend himself. He knew he had to keep the bear's jaws from getting anywhere near his face, neck, and head. The bear clamped its jaws onto his elbow, which was crushed under the force of a single bite. As the bear swatted him back and forth, Ronnie was tossed all over the place in a confusing scene of flashing teeth and slashing claws. Somehow the bear had swatted him in such a way that Ronnie found himself up on his feet. The pain he should have felt was dulled by all the adrenaline his body was dumping into his bloodstream, and as people in dangerous situations tend to do, his mind quickly found a possible solution. He sprinted toward a tree with a fork in its trunk. Hoping he could wedge himself into the crotch of the tree and find protection, Ronnie bolted toward it. He didn't quite make it into the crotch of the tree, but was caught by the bear right at the base of it. The bear bit and tore at his hand and his back as had him pressed into the ground. Ron reached for another arrow as he watched the shape of the massive bear completely obscure his son. He knew he couldn't shoot at it, as it would be too risky and put Ronnie's life in even more danger. From deep inside him, Ron could feel a primordial anger well up. He ran over to the bear and began to beat on it with his bow. He struck the bear's head and back repeatedly until it turned Ronnie loose. Just then the attack stopped, and the bear turned away a bit. It slowly and clumsily began to stagger down the hill. Ronnie yelled for his father to shoot it again, but Ron was afraid of further angering the bear and had no idea the true magnitude of the wounds he'd inflicted on the bear. The body language of the bear told the experienced hunters that it was in big trouble and didn't want any more to do with them. It staggered just a few more steps and tipped over dead where it lay. Unbeknownst to either of the men, Ron's shot placement, whether luck, divine intervention, or marksmanship, had severed a major artery near the bear's heart and gashed its heart muscle. Ronnie was covered in blood, and his surroundings started to blur and spin as he began entering shock. The bear spent more than a few dreadful seconds on Ronnie near the base of the tree, but hadn't managed to bite onto more than his elbow and hand. Nothing major seemed damaged badly, aside from some nasty bear claw marks on his back and face. That is when the men figured out that all the blood Ronnie was covered in had come from the wound his father's arrow had inflicted on the bear. As it frantically tried to kill Ronnie, it had coincidentally sprayed its blood all over him. He was still a nervous wreck, but he wasn't mortally wounded. Ron quickly began to build a fire in an attempt to ward off Ronnie's shock. The trail ride out was 15 miles of the most difficult and treacherous riding a man could do, even when he was healthy and unhurt. Ronnie was fading in and out of coherence and presence. Their cell phones were unable to pick up a reliable signal, and they knew no one would be expecting them for several more days. They really had no choice. They had to pack up their horses and ride to get Ronnie medical help. After they were ready to leave, the irony of the roles being switched as Ron helped Ronnie into his saddle came to their minds. It took the Lemings 6 hours of hardscrabble horse riding until they ran into Carl Sauerwein, who was headed up Boulder Creek to his own elk hunting camp. Carl saw the pair from a distance, and they were familiar from prior years' hunts, so he yelled out a greeting toward them. He could see Ronnie was bundled up in layers, despite the warmth of the day. As Carl approached the pair, Ronnie calmly stated that he'd just been mauled by a bear, and they were going back to get medical help. Carl could see the blood and scratches on Ronnie's face, but also noted he didn't appear to be in too bad a shape. The father and son simply tipped their hats to Carl as they rode by and continued their descent. After such an intense event, the 6-hour horse ride had Ronnie thinking about priorities and what hunting meant to him. He was assessing how risky it is, but also considered what it meant to him and his father over the years. He knew in his heart that they would be back to hunt here again. As they headed down the trail, a bull elk bugled just a few hundred yards from the trail they were on. Ronnie urged his father to go shoot it, but his father said he probably couldn't hit it. Ronnie quipped that if he made that elk chase him, he bet Ron could hit it. Ronnie was treated for puncture wounds and released from the hospital the same day. He made a full recovery and still enjoys the outdoors. Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Clicking the bell icon will let you know when we post new videos, and sharing our videos to your social media platforms helps spread awareness. As a valued member of our human community, adventure bravely and be safe out there, especially in bear country.